Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm really eager to welcome all of you here. My name is Michael Sclafani, and I am the Associate Vice President for Alumni Engagement here at the University of Calgary. And we want to officially, for those of you who are just arriving, welcome you to our Alumni Weekend. We were very grateful that the sun is out and you get to enjoy our beautiful campus, and we welcome you all. We want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. And so this is, I'm a new arrival to Canada, new arrival to obviously the university. And so this is the first time I've gotten to recognize the university as being part of the territory. So I'm honored to do that. I'm also honored to be part of this panel. It really showcases the best of what the university is working on, and that is creating the future of our city, our nation, our world, and that's what this panel is all about. So I wanted to let you know that we are also live streaming the program, so for those of you who are out in the ether, we want to welcome you also. And so we want to encourage, whether you're watching it by laptop or here in person, that you share your experiences through social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever your preference is. We want to know that you're enjoying the program, ask questions, talk to one another. Now, once the session is over, share your thoughts with us. So it's critical that you tag at UCalgary Alumni in your posts, or hashtag UCalgary Alumni, so that we can connect with you again after the program is over. So I just want to share an observation. I've spent the last 20 years in alumni engagement at universities across the United States, and this is the first university that I've worked at where our learning sessions filled up faster than our social sessions. And to me, that says a great deal about our alumni, who are really looking to the university as a source of lifelong learning, and we're really proud to be that resource for you. This being our second alumni weekend, it's really a growing, living being for us, so we welcome your feedback. What did you love about the weekend? What could we have done better? And we look forward to welcoming you to our third alumni weekend next year, same time, same place, so make sure you're here. Today we're joined by a very special group of alumni who will share their thoughts on innovation, entrepreneurial thinking, and how it impacts our city and our way of life. But before we get to that, I have the honor of introducing a very special alumna to this university, our president and vice chancellor, Dr. Elizabeth Cannon, and three-time alumna.
Thank you so much, Michael. Great to see everybody here this afternoon. It's been a fantastic alumni weekend. We had our Arch Awards last night, where we recognized some of our outstanding alumni for their achievements in our communities near and far, and it was a great evening and great session so far today. I want to also acknowledge that this session, I think, is very exciting and it's very timely. It's entitled, "What's the Big Idea? Enterprising Calgarians on Innovation." All of our panelists are alumni of the University of Calgary. We have Jim DeWalt, of course, the Dina Haskane. We have Marianne Moser, who is the creator and founder of Beakerhead. I'm sure you're going to hear more about that. It'll be moderated by our own Todd Hirsch, whom I'll introduce a little bit more in a minute, and Suzanne West, if Suzanne can make it. We're not sure where she is on campus right now. But I do want to thank the alumni engagement team for putting this together, in fact, putting the whole weekend together. As Michael noted, this is our second alumni weekend. It's the first time we've done it at this time of year, which we think is great to help kick off our academic year and allow you to really immerse yourself in the University of Calgary. And, you know, Michael, you mentioned that the learning sessions filled up before the social sessions, but I think when we hired you, we told you how smart our alumni are. They're really smart. But this is an opportunity to engage with what's happening on campus, what's happening in our community, to see some of the facilities on our campus, which are just outstanding, and really get to sample what's happening in your alma mater. A lot of this is really supported by our community, by attending these events, but also in helping support what's going on campus, and particularly this session, which is about entrepreneurial thinking and innovation. You may be aware that we launched in the spring of this year, as a legacy of our 50th anniversary, an energized Eyes High strategy, which is the guiding vision for the University of Calgary. And we engaged our community over the last year in really looking at what's next for the University of Calgary. And a theme that came across very strongly from our students, our faculty, our staff, our alumni, was to ensure that we are on the forefront of entrepreneurial thinking, helping build a stronger entrepreneurial culture on our campus, ensuring our student experience is immersed and informed by opportunities for entrepreneurial thinking in its widest means. Developing ideas, building interdisciplinary teams, and we hope in some cases going off to start companies. We launched this summer the Hunter Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking, and that is as a result of a community investment by the Hunter Family Foundation of $40 million, which is part of our $1.3 billion fundraising campaign, of which we've just exceeded $880 million. So very exciting, very timely, and of course this afternoon we're going to hear from some wonderful thought leaders. And to lead us in that dialogue is Todd Hirsch. Many of you know who Todd is. He holds an MA from the University of Calgary from 1993. He is chief economist at ATB Financial with more than 20 years experience. He provides economic commentary for many Canadian media outlets, including regular contributions to the Globe and Mail. But he's also an author of 3 books, including Spiders in Space, Successfully Adapting to Unwanted Change, which was published earlier this year. Todd has been a wonderful contributor to the University of Calgary in so many ways. He's volunteered his time, most recently serving on the University of Calgary's Board of Governors. Also, beyond the university, he's the chair of the Calgary Arts Academy. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you so much, President Cannon, for that lovely introduction and for the kind words. I'm so honored to be here this afternoon. I had the opportunity to moderate a panel last year, very similar to this, for the 50th anniversary. And I've just been so pleased the way I've been able to maintain my connections with the University of Calgary ever since I set foot on this campus way back in 1990, right around this time of year. As a young graduate student, quickly getting into my coursework, realizing maybe I'm in over my head with this master's degree, but had a wonderful experience as a student. Taught as a sessional instructor here for 9 years in 2 different faculties. Oh, and we've got Suzanne. That's so good. No, you don't need to crawl your way through the front. Served as a sessional instructor, and then, as Dr. Cannon said, I was also had the opportunity to be on the Board of Governors, and now moderating this panel this afternoon. So it's been a wonderful chance for me to reconnect with a lot of alumni and to reconnect with the campus. Now I'm going to call, well, Suzanne's just getting mic'd up, but I'm going to call the other the panelists up, and when they get up here, I will introduce them. And I do want to let you know we are live streaming this, and because of that, we are not going to do any Q&A from the audience, just because it's going to be difficult for it to pick up. However, we are going to stick around afterwards at the reception, and you'll have lots of opportunity if you do have specific questions for either myself or any of the panelists, of course, to ask them at that time. So you can be thinking about what questions you might want to pose during the reception. All right, come on up, come on up. Didn't even have a chance to heat up that chair. Nice that you could make it.
Very
Well, we're
I have
we're
a long,
relieved.
really horrible story that would be funny, but let's skip that part.
Okay. So I would like to introduce our panel. The first on the far, I guess my far right, your left, Marianne Moser, who has a BSc from 1988, an MA from 1992, and a PhD in 2005. Alumna Marianne Moser is the president, CEO, and co-founder of Beakerhead, an annual and hugely popular, and I can't emphasize that enough, hugely popular and growing all the time, Calgary-based festival that showcases the arts, sciences, and engineering sectors. Before launching Beakerhead, Marianne worked as a journalist, award-winning designer, and communications director, and over the course of her career, has started a publishing house, a renowned science communications program, and the nationwide Iron Science Contest. Please join me in welcoming Marianne Moser. Let's do, I'm going to introduce all the panel first of all, and then I'm going to give each panelist about 5 minutes for some opening comments. So the next person of the panel I'd like to introduce in the middle, Jim DeWald, who has a PhD from the University of Calgary from 2006. UCalgary alumnus Jim DeWald is the Dean of the Haskayne School of Business and an Associate Professor in Strategy and Entrepreneurship. He's the author of 2 books, Drivers Wanted, Pedal to the Metal, Seize the 21st Century in 2000, and Achieving Longevity, How Great Firms Prosper Through Entrepreneurial Thinking from 2016. He has also several research awards, articles, and chapters to his credit. Please join me in welcoming Jim to the panel. And finally, rushing in with the wind still in her hair, but she's here, Suzanne West, who has a Bachelor of Science from 1987. Alumna Suzanne West is the president and CEO of Imaginia Energy. She's a self-described dreamer, inventor, and achiever who is devoting her life to changing how we do business in finding a balance between planet, people, and profit. Suzanne is a businesswoman. She's owned and operated 4 other junior oil companies before founding Imaginia, and a philanthropist. She's also a recipient of the 2016 UCalgary Alumni Achievement Award. And we are so happy that Suzanne made it with us this afternoon. So now I'm going to move over here. Is this mic still on? Oh, this is working great. Actually, I'm going to sit here on the couch if this is all right, so we're a little closer together. So now I'm going to, let's start with Marianne for a few opening comments. And, well, I know you've prepared some things, but basically trying to get to that question, what's the big idea? What does innovation and entrepreneurial thinking mean for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought I would tell you a little bit about a big idea that we just wrapped up last week called Beakerhead. And this year in particular, we decided to create a big idea by turning Calgary into a giant, larger-than-life game of snakes and ladders. That seemed like a really, really crazy idea. What we did was install 14 installations all throughout the city, and they were connected by the story of human ingenuity. You could play this. You could start at SAIT/ACAD and make choices at each of the installations. And if you were really, really dedicated and you spent 5 hours going, throughout the city, ending up in Mission, you could get a prize. And the prize came from connecting a highlighted word at each of the 14 installations into a sentence. So there were actually 7 diehard Beakerhead fans that actually did the whole game, and they spelled this sentence. It's hard to tell if you're on the right path when you're standing still. That's 14 words. We also had it in a version of that in French. And that is really a sentiment behind Beakerhead, that it's all about action. Walk, don't talk. Show, don't tell. And this whole idea of entrepreneurial thinking comes from a proliferation of ideas. But ideas don't mean anything if they aren't acted on. So, in a way, when I was thinking about entrepreneurial thinking, in my mind, that gets turned into entrepreneurial doing. We had, in the course of coming up with Snakes and Ladders for Beakerhead 2017, we worked closely with an elder from the Blackfoot Confederacy named Casey Eaglespeaker. And we were in a course of meeting with him a few times. He taught me a word, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, Samanatsutsit. Samanatsutsit. It means just do it in Blackfoot. And here we thought Nike came up with that phrase. Thomas Edison had a very similar quote that he is often quoted as saying, and it is, "There's a better way to do it. Find it." You know, so this whole idea of entrepreneurial thinking has been with us since the beginning of time, and you might be saying, why are we asking ourselves now what it means? And the reason is, at least in my view, is that how we implement entrepreneurial thinking, you know, what we do, has everything to do with the context that we live in. And the times right now are changing so fast that this big word, entrepreneurship or innovation, that big word is an empty word unless we attach it to skills and behaviors, specific skills and behaviors that can help us make, you know, turn ideas into action. So I have a few thoughts on what those skills and behaviors look like, and I'm sure we'll dive into that over the course of the next hour or so.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marianne. Jim, to you.
Well, my mic is kind of loud. There, that's working. Let me, like my big idea, this is where it started, is really, I think that we have to gain back our entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm going to describe it this way. We have to move not only this city, but this world from a view of scarcity to a view of abundance. Using markets to add more and more, celebrating small wins, entrepreneurship on small scale that grows large. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why I think this is really important. Firstly is we live in a world that's very contextual. And let me describe it this way. How many people think, is it okay if I stand?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, how many people think that, you know, you're living in very fast changing times? Like maybe the fastest changing times ever. You know, there's always stuff coming on your cell phone. How many feel this is really fast changing time? Yeah, well, that's what I thought too. And then I started doing some research. And consider this comparison. Somebody born in 1870 versus somebody born in 1970. So somebody born in 1870, they had no home heating, they had no running water, they had no plumbing system, they had no electricity to their homes, they had no cars, it was horse and buggy. Nobody could even conceive that there might be something called flying machines. And through their lifetime, they saw all of those changes. Now, somebody who's born in 1970, in the minivan era, went all the way from minivan to SUV. Really, that's about it. There hasn't been the same level of change. And in fact, if you go back centuries and centuries, you'll see that there are these cycles. And we are now in a very mature stage of what most call the Industrial Revolution number 2, which actually started with 3 inventions that were 3 years apart. The light bulb, the telephone, and the internal combustion engine. Those 3 were all invented between 1876 and 1879, and they've kind of driven our economy. And in fact, I have news for you, because people are always saying, Jim, can you explain Donald Trump? And it's actually pretty simple because the 20th century was all of the growth that caused from that. Because if you think about it, if you're going to have cars, well, where are they going to go? You're going to need roads. And think about when it's democratized by Henry Ford, how much steel and how much rubber and how much textiles and how many engines have to be built, and on and on and on. And then you need pipelines, gas stations, refineries, so on and so forth. Well, all of that productivity happened. And that's when America was great and the West was great. And we're now getting to a very mature stage in that cycle. We need to get to the next cycle, which will probably be driven by nanotechnology and biotechnology and automation and so on and so forth. But we like what we have, so we try to hold on to it, and we cheat by using debt and tools like that to try and live and try and make America great or make things great. So I'm telling you that the only way that we can get through this is through massive entrepreneurship. And I'll be happy to talk a little more about what entrepreneurial thinking is and what we're doing at our school to make that happen. But this is why we bought into it, because we need it, our world needs it. Why shouldn't Calgary be the leaders in it? We've been the leaders before, and we can do it again. And that's my big idea.
All right. Thank you very much. Suzanne, to you.
Well, I have a lot of big ideas. We would take a long time to talk about all of them, but those of you that know Imaginea, my deeply passionate big idea is to literally completely change my industry. So I'm from the oil and gas industry. It's an industry that has provided a lot of prosperity for our province, and yet, and I'm going to say something potentially that people don't like to hear, it is a dying industry. We are not going to be surpassed by ideology. We are going to be surpassed by technology, period. And if we do not wake up and sort of reinvent ourselves without a pity party, but reinvent ourselves in a really amazing, extraordinary way, then that is how we're not only going to retain some relevance in the future of a fast-pacing future, but oh my God, we are going to put this city, this province, this country, hopefully on the map in terms of doing something incredibly important. So my big things I want to share today around entrepreneurial thinking is we must be bold and aspirational in our ideas. We can't just nibble around the edges and make things a little bit better or be incremental in our thinking. That's not good enough today. And that's why one of the reasons that entrepreneurs are so critical to the future is that they are going to be the ones. We must find the people that are courageous enough to do something bold and aspirational in terms of solving the problems that we have, creating new opportunities we have hundreds of thousands of people in this province out of work. And they are smart, talented, resourceful people. That is a tragedy of epic proportions. So Imaginea's big idea is we are going to be the first company, and hopefully first country, to produce clean hydrocarbons. So we are going to produce them without emissions, without pollution, and without the use of fresh water. We are going to create a brand new industry of clean hydrocarbons that wouldn't it be cool to go from the country that, quote, is producing the dirtiest hydrocarbons, which we can debate whether we are or aren't, but that's certainly the deep narrative, to having the country that is the first to produce the only clean hydrocarbons that everybody wants. Hydrogen and carbon are two important molecules of the future. We've typically associated them with burning them in ICEs. And internal combustion, as much as it has transformed the industrial age, is a deeply inefficient technology.
It's time to move on.
It is, we only translate maybe 20% of the input energy into forward motion. It is a deeply inefficient, and it pollutes an incredible amount in doing that. It's an inferior technology. It is time that, so we need to be thinking about not only how do we produce hydrogen and carbon differently, how do we use hydrogen and carbon differently? And carbon fiber, graphene, there's so many things of the future that these two molecules are going to be important with. Hydrogen, our imagination is really sort of our only barriers to how we rethink this industry. And if we are trapped in the nostalgia of the past, we are not going to see a future that this province is really going to be that excited about. So to me, we have to be bold and aspirational in not only finding ourselves, creating companies that solve those problems, but my other big message today, we must have companies that have greater meaning and purpose in them. We have got to move away from this capitalism hijack, which says we must make money only quarter after quarter. That is the only measure of success that we measure our companies by. And I guarantee you that is what is happening. I have an industry that has frankly been driven by IRR for 5 decades, which means, those of you that know economics, means by definition, we have not invested in the future. So we have got to reconstruct, what we are doing. Do our businesses have greater meaning and purpose? Do they have social innovation in them? Are they making the world a better place for the next 10 generations? Or are they just about making us more money quarter after quarter after quarter? If we do not change our entrepreneurial thinking into away from just greed and let's make more money, hey, Imaginea has a 3P vision, so it's planet, people, profit. I become a charity if I don't have, sustainable profitability along the way. But we cannot, and we should not be willing to leave behind the other 2 Ps any longer. So to me, hopefully we're going to have big aspirational ideas as entrepreneurs and really have ones that have deeper meaning and purpose that drive us every day.
Wow. Can you be the premier? Really inspiring, all 3 of you. I'm going to open up the conversation. I'm going to ask Marianne the first question, and it's going to be a provocative question. And I want to make sure when I ask the question that this would maybe be a question not coming from me, but coming from somebody else observing Calgary. And that statement would be this: Calgary is not entrepreneurial. It's full of office towers of employees. It's a corporate city, but it's not entrepreneurial. How do you answer that question?
Well, this is someone that doesn't live in Calgary. Obviously, I mean, the city is very entrepreneurial. If by definition you mean, or by my definition, it is you see a problem, you take action. There's a rock in your way, you find a way to go around it, through it, under it, drill, we are very action oriented. And so I think by that definition, we do. Yes, I think we have been seduced by a profit that perhaps reduced our need to innovate, but our nature is innovative.
Yeah. Jim?
Well, I'm certainly struggling with that question quite a bit, because when I came to Calgary in 1984, our plan actually was, we'll do the 2-year thing here and then go somewhere else, but totally loved what we called the can-do spirit. Mm-hmm. And it was alive, thriving, I thought very strong then. I don't see it now. In fact, I'm going to be honest with this audience. I hear way too much whining from downtown about the government and this. You couldn't even find out who was the government in '84. It wasn't in the papers or anything because nobody cared. We'd just go and do things. So I worry quite a bit, and I think that maybe there was some complacency built in through the high oil prices, and we've got to get that out of our head, and we have to be hungry. And I know a brilliant economist who had another theory, which I don't know if you want to share, on what might have impacted the industry in terms of the impact of the royalty trusts.
So what I'm hearing you're saying is that Calgary had some entrepreneurial roots, but somewhere along the line has lost it a little bit. Suzanne, do you want to?
I'm going to be probably more similar to Jim in terms of, but I'm going to provide sort of two concepts. One is that for the most part, we are not entrepreneurial. We have been anesthetized into basically being big corporate. We expect people to give us jobs and pay us lots of money and give us, so we used to have a lot more. That's definitely diminished. We have become more institutionalized. I can tell you we are becoming more risk averse. We talk about it, but I know the C-suite, I know downtown Calgary, and we're just risk averse. However, I'm also a pathological optimist, which is annoying to many people, but I will also tell you I agree with Mary, our nature, we were born to be creators. That's our intrinsic nature. We crave creating. We crave contributing and adding value. So there are absolutely people out there that have this entrepreneurial spirit. My issue is we are not supporting them. So we are not supporting, so where there are breaths and people that are out there, we aren't supporting them financially, for sure. To be a new SME in a new thing, you got to count on some friends and family to help you, because there is no sort of institutionalized financial support for that. We just ran, Imagine as one of our contributions of giving back in this world, is that I ran a boot camp, an entrepreneurial boot camp for a whole day. So that people can come and learn, and hey, whether you can say I know what to do, but that's all you got is me, is to teach the skill sets. And the consistent message out of that's oh my God, where are more of these? That we're teaching people the skills and really tangible capabilities around being an entrepreneur, of what bear traps not to step in, etc. So we're not teaching, we have university, but we don't have within the communities enough. We're not teaching it to a kindergarten. We should teach a kindergarten kid how to run a business. We should teach people how to do budget.
Where did that come from originally, though? Were we doing a better job of that maybe in the 60s and 70s, and somewhere along the line with $100 oil, we lost sight of the importance of doing that?
I think, hey, if there was probably one reason, we probably would have figured it out already, but I think there's a number of contributing factors. I think we were hungrier. Yeah. I think we had less. When you have less, you're hungrier. That's one of the great things. I've lived with nothing, zero. I had no salad, nothing. I rolled the dice on everything. You're super hungry because you're only eating what you kill.
I travel in those circles
yeah.
still where everybody's still really hungry.
And when you're hungry, you're like, you don't care about how big your office is and whether you get Fridays off or like, because you don't get Fridays off as an entrepreneur, by the way. So there's some hungriness, and as well, I think there was a greater ecosystem that sort of supported that, as opposed to like in the oil and gas, I can tell you, unless something radically, the days of the junior are gone, done. Because the only way we're surviving in my industry is by consolidation and economies of scale, because that's all they know. And so right now, 90% of the production in the province is produced by 6 companies.
The ecosystem is coming though.
Yeah, it is.
It's
That's what I said.
developing right
I don't
now.
want to sound down. Like, it's
So-
absolutely there, but what we have to do is we have to know that it is the future. We must focus our efforts on promoting it, teaching it, supporting it, both emotionally, financially, physically, spiritually, whatever, right,
Well,
to do that.
I want to park that idea of entrepreneurial thinking for just a moment, but we are going to come back to it, because I do want to get into this other term that gets thrown around a lot, and that is innovation. Now, as an economist, I don't know how many times I read about innovation. You know, we have to be more innovative. In this company, we're all about innovation. You can't pick up a white paper or somebody's vision statement without that word innovation hanging in it. Now, I've done a little bit of work in writing about innovation, but the danger of the word is that it's becoming a jargony word. And then if it becomes jargon, people stop paying attention and it kind of falls into the wastebasket of cliches. Marianne, what's your definition of innovation? Do you have one that you work with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we, you know, at a certain point I said, I am not going to go to another meeting or conference about innovation. It's just pointless. And that's where we have this mantra at Beakerhead: walk, don't talk, show, don't tell. And so innovation is so important and so empty at the same time, and yet the skills and behaviors that we mean by it couldn't be more critical, you know. And I think that I circulate in a world that is still very impoverished, and you know, the potential lies in where the worlds of engineering and art can come together. What we found in terms of skills and behaviors at Beakerhead anyways, which is an innovative organization, is 2 things. One, culturally, the behavior that we have to enact is one of tolerance. And by that I mean we are bringing together engineers and artists, or people from the art world and the science, and they're different, you know. Socially, they hang around with different groups of people. The codes are different. Their educations are different. There's friction between these groups. And so we've created an opportunity for people to deliberately work together who might not otherwise work together. So culturally, we've decided that we're going to create an environment where our differences are not seen as problems, but as potential. I mean, you look around the world and you can see what happens when you look at differences and treat them as problems. They're war zones, right? You look at places where differences are seen as potential, like Silicon Valley, and you see a lot of prosperity. So we can't just leave this up to chance, because the art world's going to hang around with the art world, so on, right? So we have to create platforms. Beakerhead is one, where groups of people with differences come together and see the power in that. So that's the cultural piece. What does that look like at the individual level? We do this at the table when we're brainstorming. You have to check your ego at the door. So that is skill number 1. Just leave it there, gather diverse people around the table, and start working on this problem, this thing in the middle. And because you've left your ego at the door, you can create awesome things. Nobody's invested in this idea individually, right? So we separate ideas from their owners, and then all of a sudden everybody can pool in, and this thing gets better and better and more awesome and delightful. And nobody takes it personally if their idea got changed or morphed. In fact, they in the end look at this thing that is better than any one person could come up with, and they all feel a sense of ownership over it. And all of a sudden we've made manifest how it is that our differences make us stronger. I mean, I know that sounds pretty airy-fairy, but it really works. I mean, we've seen it work.
Jim, do you think you can teach innovation?
Well, and so in management theory, innovation has a very narrow, specific definition, because you're looking at organizations and what can organizations, what can firms do. So innovation is very strictly defined as taking invention and commercializing it, making some value out of it. And there's different types of innovation. Could be innovation of a product that was invented, could be innovation of a new business model. So Southwest and what they created in the airlines, that was a business model innovation. But the beauty of it in management theory, it becomes very much a team sport. So it dovetails exactly with what you're saying, that it's very important to have process, to have diversity, and to keep the numbers in mind. So there's a lot of study on innovation and management theory, and it's very, very effective. It helps people understand how within an organization you can take an idea and commercialize it and make it beneficial for the whole organization.
The working definition that I used in my first book was similar to that, but it tried to make the distinction between invention over here and design improvements over here. And in the middle, the innovation was the combination of existing inventions or technologies, combining them, or maybe several of them, in a new way. So I think that sort of gets to that. Do you want to speak to what you're seeing in innovation, or maybe not seeing in innovation, specifically in Calgary's energy patch?
Yes, so innovation to me is, I'll say, just because it makes it slightly more interesting, I'm going to say some controversial things, which may not.
We like controversy.
Yeah, so
you're going to be the premier after all, so you might as well get used to it.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of, but what I'll tell you the same thing I tell people at Imagineer in terms of if what I see doesn't resonate, or it's like, oh, she's full of, it's like, ask yourself in terms of, are you still open to ideas? Because it's one of the things that if we constantly are just judging every single thing we hear as good and bad, I agree or disagree, we're likely actually narrowing the window of where our openness is to innovation. So I'm going to say a few controversial just to get you to practice thinking this. One of the reasons in downtown, and I'm going to restrict this to downtown Calgary because I know that this is happening outside of this. The major reason that innovation does not happen in downtown Calgary is because we have deeply embedded command and control organizational models. And until you dismantle command and control organizational models, you will
From
not.
the 20th century.
From the 20th century, when we developed them, when we were making widgets, it is a old model that does not work. It is not how we reach into the potential of people. It is not how we have innovative, collaborative cultures. And in fact, it is the immune system which kills innovation and collaboration because it's driven off of fear. Now, if you are afraid, your job, you are not bringing, and then even if you're bold enough, even if you're bold enough to be that sort of dissenter saying, I'm going to throw out my bold aspirational idea, and then the first time you see someone publicly hanged, the next guy is going, that wasn't a good idea at all. So we have, and I'm being a bit dramatic, and it's not always like that, but it is, I'm telling you, 100%, until this town dismantles this orientation towards command and control organizational models, it will not have, I can tell you horror story after horror story of what, and competition has been absolutely hijacked in my industry into being hyper competitive and destructively competitive. Competitive to me, and remember these are my ideas, or opinions, it doesn't make them right or wrong. To me, the real essence of competition is when you constantly have in your brain that there are options for your customers, that your customers always have another potential option. So it's the thing that keeps you sharp, that says, you know what, that person has potentially another option from my product, whatever that is. I should continually be inventing, reinventing, innovating to make sure that they pick my product instead of somebody else's product, as opposed to my industry has gravitated to, you must lose, so I win. And it has become, we don't share, because God forbid you win too. That can't happen.
But
Right.
it can, and that's
It
sort
can,
of the
and it's-
concept of scarcity versus
It
abundance.
is, I totally agree with Jim in terms of we have these old mentalities of fixed pie.
Yeah.
It's like, I must fight and keep my piece of the pie, because if I don't, you're going to either take it from me, or as opposed to, why aren't we focusing as an industry in making this pie super big so there's plenty to go around, and so that we have the rising tide lifts all the boats in the harbor. Like, we do not have this abundance thinking at all, and we have this very limited thinking that is, it's going to keep us stuck, so that innovation just becomes a buzzword and a very dangerous one, because we don't have cultures that really, in the oil and gas industry, support them of the fear and the risk aversion, saying, like, literally, I have the benefit now, because I've held up my hand as an early adopter in the oil and gas. I can tell you, I am so excited. There is no lack of ideas and technology that is available for us to go to clean hydrocarbons. Like, it's a tsunami at some level. Now, we have to sift, how do we make money doing that, et cetera. But I cannot tell you the number of times that I have spoken to these inventors, et cetera. It's like, well, who have you told this to? It's like, I've told this to everybody. And every single one of the big oil companies downtown says, come to me when 11 other people before me have done it, and we have all the data and the case studies, and Jim's done a report on that this definitely works.
And proof that it is going to make
And proof that
money.
it's, and because I don't want to have any chance that I don't make any money, so I have to have these for sure answers. It's like, God, nobody is,
And that's
an
a
early
symptom
adopter.
of
It's
that's a symptom of the 20th century command and control corporate structure,
It's
which was
just a
driven
symptom.
by shareholders, right?
Yeah.
Which
It's a
works when the whole economy is growing like it was.
Yeah.
Or
And everyone's
it
happy.
works in the military where people potentially are dying. It works if you're producing a product which is just a manufacturing. It doesn't change. The 1,000th one is the same as the first one you put through the thing, and quality control is really your only drive. Like, it came sort of out of something, but it is not applicable today, where we have knowledge workers, where we're trying to tap into the creativity and the innovation of human beings, which were so ingenious. Like, God, we're so ingenious, and we have organizations that just squash it. And collaboration, we have organizations that have internal competition. Good Lord. Like, it's bad enough to actually have external competition. Now we have to actually compete with each other, and we're supposed to be on the same team. Like,
Well, Marianne, I want to draw you in on that question. So you come from a little bit of a different world in that it's not the command and control corporate structure. It's very kind of wide open, and it's science. How do you see the contrasts or the parallels, maybe, between that world and what you're seeing in corporate Calgary? And are there lessons maybe for corporate Calgary from even organizations like Beakerhead?
For sure. I want to quote Jeff Douglas, who was in a Beakerhead show last week, because he used this word result as opposed to failure. He borrowed it from science. And he, this way of thinking of everything that you do as a bit of an experiment takes you off the hook, and you can't really fail because you just didn't get the result that you expected, right? So, so if we approached every problem that we were trying to solve that way, then you couldn't get fired, right? And it would just sort of bust open the willingness of everybody to help solve those problems, because there's no such thing as failure. When we were just getting Beakerhead going, the idea that it might fail, it was a great big, it was born big, and it felt risky for just a second, and then I realized, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So there's no shame in not trying. There's no shame in failing, only in not trying.
Well, Jim, and I'd like your thought on that, because I think everyone would agree with those sentiments. However, if I'm the CEO of a 20th century oil and gas company, I would say, well, there are results, but if they lose me money, our shareholders are going to go ballistic, and I'm going to lose my job, or we're going to have to lay people off. Like, losing money is a result that is negative.
Yeah,
And a lot of, right now, last couple of years, there's a risk aversion built in just by profit. Do you have a thought on that, or
yeah,
how do we work around
what I've found in my research is that the firms that last like a long time, like generations, centuries, they last because they change, not because they stay the same. And it really changed my thinking a lot around in our strategy classes. We always we teach to go towards something called sustainable competitive advantage. And you hear about core competence, and Jim Collins talked about the hedgehog again. It's like there's this magic thing that will protect you forever. That's a total fallacy. The companies that actually last long, and there's some great ones. So I looked at IBM. IBM's gone through so many transitions. People think it's a technology company. You should look at the history. It is completely transformed multiple times, hundreds of thousands of employees. Honda, how they've been able to focus on what can you do with engineering know-how and just trying to dig in and find out what'll work, what won't work. Very experimental. And what I found time and time again is two things. One is the companies that last a long time, it's because they change. Two is, and this was scary, every company that doesn't change, I'm not like virtually every company fails, and they fail pretty fast. 50% of operating companies are gone in their first 10 years. Actually, first 5 years. 50% gone in 5 years, and the next 10 years, another 50%. We always think, like now we know like Suncor is a big name, Cenovus, on and on. But even go back like 10, 15 years, and you'd be amazed to look at the companies in Calgary. It's a totally different list. And if you look at the Dow Jones 30, it changes, like the big ones change. So really, your only sense of security is your ability to have entrepreneurial thinking and innovation within your firm so that you can change.
So Suzanne, does that give you some hope? Because we were, sort of bashing the 20th century model of corporate command and control. The idea, if they remain that way, they're going to be gone if they can't change and adapt. It sounds like we still have that mentality here. Is it changing? Are those companies able to change, or are they going to be the dinosaurs of?
Hey, again, I'm a pathological optimist, so I'm going to always say, I would say, I'm going to simplify a little bit just for illustrative purposes. I think there's kind of three buckets so when we go out and talk about Imagineer, the ideas that we have to transform our industry, there's a group of people that when you hear the idea, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing, we love it, how can we help? How are you doing it? Like the questions become around, how could I do it? Or it's around the exploration of what that idea and how we could incorporate. On the opposite side, there's a group of people that I swear to God, if the angel Gabriel came down himself and said you should change, they're not going to change. Which is fine because evolution takes care of dinosaurs. I'm not worried about that.
They become fossil fuels.
Yeah, they become fossil fuels. So and I don't think they're there, but I'm really hopeful for this middle group of people, which is why I wake up in the morning excited about Imagineer, is there companies, groups of people, CEOs, et cetera, that have been conditioned so long to just believe this is the only way. That they don't necessarily, they want to be different, they have more aspirations, but they don't know how to do it, and they feel constrained by shareholder demand for whatever reason, and they can't see the possibilities of what we're saying. So when we do, and hey, I'm not there yet, but when I show that you can produce a clean hydrocarbon, when I show you can have solutions, that you can do things sustainable and make great profits, when you can tangibly show it, when I hack my way through the jungle with my machete and leave the breadcrumbs for people to follow, people will follow. They just don't know how. And they're not willing to be the early adopter. They're not willing to sort of step out of their comfort zone. But I really believe nobody wakes up and says, I want to ruin the planet. Nobody does that. Well, maybe a sociopath, but nobody really does that. So we've just anesthetized people too long to believe there's no other solutions to do that. And so when we can show that, I'm actually really hopeful that the people will recognize that I sort of consider myself a little bit, because he's my hero, is Elon Musk, is that we're sort of like the Tesla of, he came into an old industry that says, we know how to make cars. We made cars forever, we know how to make cars. And he says, I'm gonna make a better car. And he did. I love my Tesla. He made a great car. It also happens to not pollute. It's more efficient. It's a superior technology. And you're seeing the uptake, not because people just think it's cool anymore, but because it's becoming a better choice. It's going to become cheaper. It's like, it has 14 moving parts, and ICE has over 2,000 moving parts that require maintenance. It's cheaper fuel. It's just going to, so we're hoping that, if we can show that this is just going to become the better answer, people are just going to say, well, we should do that too, right? That's where we're really, that will be Imagineer's greatest contribution, is when we transform the industry, because people saying, I want to do that too.
So segueing a little bit away from industry, let's talk about academia. We all have an association with this university. Jim, you're employed by this university. And we all, I think, have a sincere interest in promoting the interest of the University of Calgary. Is the University of Calgary innovative? Can they lead in innovation? I mean, the obvious, we all want to say, well, of course. Is it? And that's maybe not a criticism of the U of C, it's a criticism maybe of post-secondary. Because if corporate Calgary is slow to change, academia can be very slow to change and innovate too. We still have lecture theaters, where one person reads from a book to 500 people. And that model is 600 years old because back then only one person had a book, and they would read the book to the other 500 people. And that was how a lecture, but we're still doing it. I know we're doing all kinds of really, really cool things, but more generally, is the university leading in innovation in this city or not?
I mean,
Marianne.
I would say it's a two-way street. I think the leadership here is definitely interested in supporting entrepreneurship and innovation, and it's up to students as well. When I was finishing my BSc in zoology, I was really interested in science and society, and I wanted to study sociobiology. Richard Dawkins had just published The Selfish Gene. And so I went to the dean and asked if I could take a directed studies, and it turned out some of the professors were also interested in that subject. And I have said ever since, I had the best education you could ever imagine. I had a class, me and 3 professors, reading the latest literature from science because I went and asked. Like, what was being offered didn't meet my interest at that time. Could I do this? Phenomenal opportunity. So is it innovative? Or yes, if students and the willingness is there on both sides.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
So I heard 2 distinct questions. One is, can the university be innovative? And 2 is, can the university lead in innovation? So I'll start with the first one. It's tougher for a big institution to be innovative, and for sure, there's a lot of people that expect it to be very reliable and what they know. But there are a lot of innovative things going on in the university. For one, we do have phenomenal leadership through Elizabeth and Drew, and we're very fortunate with that. We have a lot of what we call flipped classrooms. I would say more than half of our program now is taught that way. And what that means, instead of what we call the sage on the stage, speaking down to the students, students will do the work in advance, and they'll come, and I teach a course, and this is how it starts. They have podcasts and material before they get in a case, and they present to me.
Awesome.
And then I comment back, and then we have dialogue, we add more complications to it, and discuss different theoretical approaches. So it's a very engaged, involved. And then there's also online learning and blended learning, which blended learning we're finding really, really strong, where it's a combination of online and face-to-face. And our Global Energy Executive MBA is all over the world. So they go to London, England. So if you want to learn about insurance, well, why not go to Lloyd's of London? But they, of course, we can't have the whole class there, so they do a lot of online stuff before we get there. And they go to the Middle East and meet with government officials to learn what's it like to be in a place where you put a straw on the ground and oil comes up, sort of Jed Clampett. And then they go to China as well, and what's it like in the opposite, and so there's lots of innovation happening at the university, and I'm proud of that, and I'm really excited about it. We'd all like to see it go faster, but it's probably going, I would think, at a good pace. Can the university lead in innovation? Totally, absolutely. And that's where the students and the content that we provide to the students is important. So one thing we've done at the business school is we have now a required course. Everyone who gets a degree in our school takes a course on entrepreneurial thinking. And the idea is that we don't expect that we graduate about 1,000 people a year in the BCom and the MBA, and we're not going to have 1,000 people who are going to create the next Google or Facebook. But we absolutely know that all 1,000 people somewhere in their career, especially if we do go in a new industrial revolution, will need those entrepreneurial thinking skills so that they can adapt and they can innovate in the place they're at. So if we give them those tools, then we can lead in innovation.
Suzanne, from the corporate Calgary's perspective, how do they view the University of Calgary? Do they view it as, well, it's up there, and it's fine? But do they understand the potential connections? Maybe they do. I don't work in the energy sector, so I don't know.
They can do a much better job of being inclusive. I think the
The U of C or corporate Calgary?
Corporate, their general view is that the university works on R&D. That's sort of the general narrative of that's their place, that's what they do. They're connected with them at that. Lots of the big companies direct the R&D efforts. We'd like you to work on this particular problem, oil sands or something like that. So there's that sort of but I would say that's a kind of still an old thinking of they just saying, spend the next 20 years, researching this and hopefully something,
And make me rich,
and
yeah.
make me rich, right? So I think it's still a very old thinking.
So do they
around
understand the entrepreneurial training
No.
that students are getting and
No.
how that when they're doing recruitment
No.
to fill the cubicles in those towers, the entrepreneurial thinking, that's not really on
No.
their radar?
And again, I don't mean to sound negative, I'm just trying to be practical in terms of for you to fit in command and control, you don't want entrepreneurial thinking.
Yeah. Right. No.
Like, I'm sorry, but you just don't want that because, like, we want people to
You
actually
want
follow the
drone-
rules.
You want
and,
drone bees. Right?
You want robots, so they're not
And
necessarily.
they're coming, apparently.
Yes,
so.
right, yeah.
Exactly. So I think they're not. I think they're not aware of the real. I agree. Shout outs to Elizabeth and Jim and Bill Rosehart at the engineering. Really innovative leaders that are trying. I think post-secondary as a general, and I don't speak about U of C as a specific. Post-secondary education, just like every institutionalized banks, everybody's going to get disrupted. If you think that you are immune from being disrupted by all the technology and innovation that's coming, then you are living with your head in the sand. And so post-secondary, there's really amazing things happening at U of C, but likely you're going to have to do more to continue to reinvent yourself faster and better because institutionalized post-secondary may be gone in 20 years for all I know. I don't know. Because something better will have, same thing, it's always something better displaces it, right?
Marianne, you actually work with robots. You probably have, there were robots in Beaker. What are some of your thoughts about, because I get asked this question all the time when I go around and talk about the economy. People are asked this question about, is it really true 40% of all the jobs are going to be gone because robots? And they're not kidding. People are fearful. Well, how do you respond to that?
I'm not afraid at all of when robots are our overlords because if you apply the prisoner's dilemma and robots will be able to have like endless insight, then they will be kind and compassionate, right? Because that's the win-win. I mean, this is what you were saying, Suzanne, and I think that's where we see the world going. It'll be fine.
Well, let's leave overlords out of it for a bit. That's a dark area. I'm thinking driverless cars, or I was speaking to a construction industry association, and they seem to believe that they're immune from this. And I didn't want to give a bucket of cold water, but I'm like, I can't think of an easier thing for a robot to do than fill potholes, you know. And you're all going to be out of work, so never mind the overlords, but just replacing certain occupations. How do you give people some sense that, what I try to do is give them a sense that there is no limit to human ingenuity and there's whole new industries and jobs that, don't have names yet.
Absolutely.
And those are the jobs of the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an area that I have any special expertise in at all, but yes, there are certain things, creative thinking, creativity. We specialize in creativity as human beings. So no one, I don't think a robot will be taking that away from us.
One of the stories, and then I want to ask Jim this question, but one of the stories I loved hearing was back in the early 1940s in New York City, a group, I guess a union of musicians, they were protesting and they were on strike against the innovation of the jukebox. And they weren't kidding. They thought if this jukebox innovation takes off and every bar and milkshake shop in America has a jukebox, we're all out of work. No one will need a live musician. So they were fighting this, and of course, unsuccessfully. And we look back on it now and we kind of chuckle. But what they didn't see, a jukebox is static. It can play back the recording, but it can't innovate rock and roll music and rap music and all of the new genres of music. That's the creativity and human ingenuity.
I think it's important, though, too, to, again, my pathological bullet, to recognize if we ignore It is real. Robots are going to displace thousands and thousands of jobs, of mechanistic things that they will do better than human beings. Human beings aren't good drivers, period. There's boatloads of data for decades that we are not good drivers. We suck at it. So robots actually will be better drivers, so they should replace us because we suck at it.
In 20 years, a little child will say, "Mommy, did they really used to let people drive a
It
car?
would be like,
Yeah,
really?
absolutely.
Wasn't that dangerous?
This?
Yes, and it is.
What if they fell asleep
Yeah.
or were drunk?
Yeah.
Like, why on earth? It'll
So
seem actually quite
there will
kind of
be
absurd.
many things that will be displayed. There won't be certain jobs anymore because robots will just be better. But I'm with Marianne in terms of wouldn't it be a great society where we actually moved away from, spending all our time and energy into just surviving and paying our bills into being creative beings because our needs are being met by a robotic driven. Now, I'm a huge believer, if we do not raise consciousness as technology advances, we are going to have technology that does bad things to the world, period. So we need to raise our consciousness as human beings so that we make the right choices.
Right.
Just because we can do it with the technology doesn't mean we should.
It's that TV series, The Black Mirror.
Oh
Black
my
Mirror.
goodness,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen this. I think it's Netflix now. It's all around technology and set in the very near future, like the next 2 or 5 years maybe, and how this all ends very badly for us all. But I think the benefit of it is, to your point, raising awareness. If we don't stay on top of this and we don't harness it and use it properly, it is going to end badly. We only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that each of you, if there was some pressing issue or something that you had hoped to verbalize. Let's start with Jim.
Well,
Not for very final words, but
sure. I mean, I actually brought my.
Oh yeah, I want to see what's in this bag. I've been dying
So I want
for
to.
an hour.
I want to.
Jim says he has a prop, but he wouldn't
Well,
tell
no,
us.
I've got some things. I've
it
got
a
something
puppet,
here
like a
for.
ventriloquist?
I've got something here for
would
that
be-
you can share.
Elon Musk.
My favorite dude.
Like people always ask
This
me
guy's
what
got
books
balls of
you-
titanium. Like,
Yeah.
holy dude.
So I have just a few book recommendations, and this is one. Elon Musk, and what's the subtitle on that thing? Tesla.
Tesla, SpaceX, and the quest for a fantastic future.
Yeah, good book.
Great book.
Fantastic book.
This is a guy that does not think in barriers. People think what I'm doing is crazy. This person's putting people on Mars in 9 years.
Yeah.
I don't think what I'm doing is actually really all that.
Angela Duckworth, Grit, Passion and Perseverance. Unbelievable. Really, really strong book. Highly recommend that. Some people, when it comes to innovation, entrepreneurial thinking, would know the book Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean Strategy, brand new book. Blue Ocean Shift. And there's a great, fantastic example here of, because we were going to go a little bit into the social area, which is phenomenal, big innovation. And the authors talk about prisons in Malaysia and how they use the Blue Ocean Strategy canvas to go from incarceration and building big prisons to rehabilitation in a serious way. So
Do you
really
want me to
good
be a
stuff.
bookshelf for you and hold those books?
Yeah, sure. And well, I thought I should pull out a couple favorites, just so you know. So this is a little commercial. Dick Haskine's book is being reprinted. So Northern Tigers. So that's something you want to keep an eye out for. And absolute greatest book in the world, just out, and I'm hoping to get it signed. It's called Spiders in Space, Successfully Adapting to Unwanted Change. This is what it looks like. I have a pen, and you can wait until after.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were going to pull out your book. You really
Oh,
should.
well,
Well, you
I
have. He has
I do
his
have my
book.
book,
too.
so just in case. But
Well,
I
I will
my
sign this.
sort of, and I will give you, because I know you're running out of time, my closing words are how important it is to be open-minded, to think abundance rather than scarcity, and join the Rainforest Alberta. It's a great movement about building our ecosystem. And when we're in the discussions and people say, oh, well, so-and-so is starting an incubator, an accelerator, and the people in the central say, well, that's fine. Let's bring it all on. There should be a lot of space and room to just try everything, grow, experiment, and Calgary will be a better place.
Marianne, kind of wrap up. What's your burning thought here?
I was at a International Science Festival event, and people from all different science festivals were there. And over dinner one night, the group was just saying they were so jealous in a way of what I was able to do. Like, how did I get permission to, create an organization that was so flat and collaborative? And like, there isn't anyone to ask permission of, like, except maybe our board chair. But, one of the sayings that we often use is, the only reason you're not doing it is you're not doing it.
So do it.
Yeah.
That was the phrase, just do it,
Yeah.
Aboriginal.
Yeah, and if you look for why aren't we creating the companies that we want? Why aren't we coming up with, applying technology to solve all these problems? Why aren't we? There's no reason why we aren't. Just do it.
Yeah.
Samana suits it.
That's
As the Blackfoot
yeah.
would say.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
And the very final word we'll leave for the pathological optimist. Is that what you
Yes.
called yourself?
So I'll leave it with two thoughts. One is that the world has complex problems, and we will solve them better together. We have to create ourselves into an ecosystem of sharing, of appreciating diversity, of really this mindset in service of each other. How do I help Jim? How does Jim help me? How do I, just, if every conversation we had was like, hey, Todd, how do you help me and how do I help you? If we had every conversation like that, we would solve problems.
Rather than holding my innovation.
It's like,
this
oh
is
God,
secret.
maybe that. If we really change our mindset to be this collaborative, society in service of helping each other, solving really complex problems, we will move the dial that much faster, that much better. And my final comment, we will never achieve anything extraordinary if we are afraid of failing. Mm-hmm. Never. So we must be bold. We must find courageous leaders that will step into that space of the unknown and be willing to sort of, saying, woo, if I'm going down swinging, or when I fail, you know what, we'll just pick ourselves up, dust ourselves up, help each other up, and saying, we're going forward. And we must have that passion about a future, and believe that we are the creators of the future that is ahead of us. If we are morose and victims of a history that we think we're relegated to, we will never have an amazing future. And there is, I am a pathological optimist. There is an amazing future ahead for us that is so much better for everybody, where we don't leave anybody behind, right? We have 1 billion people without food and clean water today. How did we get there, right? We have a better future. We have to design it better. We want the history books to write it about the courage of this group of people, wherever they are, they said, not on my watch, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I remember a couple months ago, Buffy over there, who is the coordinator of this event from the alumni office, she wanted to reasonably pull the 4 of us together and have a lunch so we can sort of go over what we're going to talk about and kind of, think about some. It never came together. We're 4 very busy people. We've never all 4 been in the same spot until now. And I said, I'm not worried a single bit about this panel because we could go another hour, but we're not. Now it is over to you. You've heard some of the most inspiring panelists in our city around innovation, around entrepreneurial thinking, around what it's going to take to move this city forward. We're coming out of a terrible recession, but we've got a lot of senses, a brand new clean slate in which to build from. But alumni and maybe current students, it really is going to be up to you to not just leave it up to these 3 individuals, but to take their ideas and to take them back to maybe the companies you work for, or the companies you're going to start up, or the groups that you are volunteering with, and use what you've heard this afternoon around innovation and risk-taking and that sense of, what is it? We don't fail, we have results. So with that, I want to, is Michael going to come back up? I'm going to call Michael back up, but I want to thank all 3 of the panelists this afternoon. Absolutely wonderful.
So I also want to thank Todd and our panelists, and we have a few door prizes that we want to give out. Before we get to that, I want to remind everyone that Alumni Weekend is still going, and it's going strong. We have hors d'oeuvres and cocktail cash bar available at the back of the room as soon as we're done. But we invite you to join us again tomorrow for a full, till about 2:30. We run until about 2:30 tomorrow. But remaining today, we still have a tailgate party and football game going on at the stadium. So please join us for that. And the tailgate is free of charge. And tomorrow, be sure to come back for the TD Park, sponsored by TD Insurance, Milosh Milonics, and check out some of the great alumni entrepreneurs that are represented there. And don't forget about the opportunities to connect. They don't stop after this weekend. I think it was Suzanne who said that time takes care of dinosaurs. Well, the alumni office takes care of dinos. And so we make sure that you have something to do, a way to connect with your university. No matter what your passion is, we'll find a way to funnel it into something constructive. So we have door prizes. Oh, sorry. Okay, so Nikisa Donnelly, are you here? Come on up. Bob Brown and Ruben Ganana Kumar. There you go. Okay, so please join us in the back. Our panelists will be back there if you'd like to say hello, and please join us for a cocktail and some hors d'oeuvres. Thank you.